In 1941, when America went to war, so did many of Hollywood's greatest stars. Not only did they enlist in the armed services, but through the United Services Organization, they entertained our troops, both at home and on the front lines, and they hosted bond rallies and celebrity tours. They made hospital visits, and they participated in the famous Stage Door Canteen. That was in New York, and the Hollywood Canteen out west. Through rare, never-before-seen photos from the stars themselves, newsreel footage and film clips, this hour-long special chronicles a very special time in our nation's history. So with that, let's join an all-star lineup, which includes Bob Hope, Dorothy Lamour, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Roddy McDowell, and our host, Tony Randall, as they tell us their story of Stars and Stripes, Hollywood, and World War II.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
Here we are, out of cigarettes, holding hands and yawning. Look how late it gets. Two sleepy people by dawn's early light. Too much in love to say goodnight. Oh, Gracie.
We may as well have been sound asleep when Pearl Harbor stunned us into the realization that closing our eyes wouldn't keep the war in Europe away. When we finally woke, two things were frightfully clear. The world was in danger, and fascism had to be stopped.
Here we are, just about the...
Hollywood, the romping ground of our screen deities, might have seemed an unlikely place to be a vital center of support for a war. After all, Detroit could make tanks and Pittsburgh steel. But what resources could a land that made make-believe provide? What resources, indeed?
He was a famous trumpet man from out Chicago way. He had a boogie style that no one else could play. He was the top man at his craft. But then his number came up and he was gone with the draft. He's in the army now, a blowing reveille. He's the boogie-woogie bugle boy of Company B. They made him blow a bugle for his Uncle Sam. It really brought him down because they couldn't jam. The captain seemed to understand. Because the next day the cat went out and drafted a band. And now the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's the boogie-woogie bugle boy of Company B.
I christened these Thunderbirds, and may you rain bombs on Berlin and Tokyo.
In hindsight, World War II was a remarkably innocent time. Before television brought celebrities into our living rooms and air travel shrunk the earth, movie stars were the sophisticates in an unsophisticated world. Hollywood, like the rest of the country, rolled up its collective sleeves. Back then, this wasn't corny. It was just plain old life.
Off with the stockings, girls. They're due for the discard, and the war effort needs them. In a silk and nylon campaign, the government is asking us to turn in our worn-out silk and nylon stockings. Not new and good ones, but worn-out stockings. So motion picture starlets contribute theirs. Film star Lynn Barry collects the stockings at the 20th Century Fox studio in Hollywood and is helped by another star, Alice Faye, in inspecting them. There's an explosive reason for the silk and nylon drive. The stockings will be used in making powder bags for firing heavy guns. Let's see how the silk and nylon bags filled with powder are used. Girls, here's how your worn-out stockings will go to war and hit the Nazis and the Japs a great big sock.
It's a very difficult time to understand World War II now because we're so far removed and it was a much more innocent atmosphere. Remember, we were in a time when the motion picture was, I think, the 6th largest industry in the United States. That's a tremendous thing to appreciate. So all the people who peopled that profession had a very, very high profile.
The first stars to throw their weight against fascism did so before we entered the war. Like the rest of the country, Hollywood had its isolationist leanings, but a few brave individuals persisted in speaking out.
Well, there was a great feeling in the film industry that people in the film industry should not come out publicly and take sides in any political matter because it would affect film business. And from that point of view, they're probably right, it would affect it because it's so controversial. But a few of us, Jimmy Stewart and myself, were two of the ones who spoke out to begin with, just because we didn't give a darn.
America's #1 movie star joins the big parade. James Stewart, winner of top film honors for 1940, volunteers for his greatest role, Buck Private in Uncle Sam's Army. Swapping a $1,500 a week Hollywood job for $21 a month as a rookie, the lanky screen idol, once rejected for underweight, makes the grade this time without a hitch.
Oh, how I hate to get up in the morning.
With Pearl Harbor behind us, other Hollywood patriots joined up along with millions across the country. Tyrone Power, Robert Montgomery,
You gotta get up, you gotta get up.
Clark Gable,
This morning, someday I'm going to murder the beautiful.
Jackie Coogan,
Someday they're going to find him.
Robert Taylor.
I'll amputate his.
Some of them had portrayed soldiers in their own films, but this time when the fighting began, there was no one to yell, "Cut."
Dawn was just breaking, and just the first streaks of light were visible, and our boats with our fellows had been in a raid, were making off from the shore very slowly because it didn't want to create a wake which was so visible in the dark. The water would churn up and look so white, and it'd be a target for the Germans who were trying to find them in the dark. So the boats would have to go painfully slow, and it was terrible temptation to speed up and get out of range of the guns. So I was standing next to a fellow officer. We were standing shoulder to shoulder behind a hillock, just looking over the top. I looked around, and I won't go into details, but he got it. That was about as close as I wanted to get to the last act.
Back home, the knowledge that our screen heroes were signing up became a tool for enlistment officers across the country. When local theaters showed Winning Your Wings, an Air Force recruiting film starring Jimmy Stewart, thousands of young men decided to join the fight. And why wouldn't they when he described it like this?
What you're going to see next isn't considered exactly a part of the regular training course. But you're a chump if you don't include it in your curriculum. And you find out the effect those shiny little wings have on a gal. And it's phenomenal.
Clark Gable narrated a recruiting film called Wings Up for Officers Candidate School. When Rhett Butler urged you to join, it was hard to say no, even when he made it completely clear what you were getting yourself into.
Look out, mister. Here it comes. Oh, you're a real estate agent, mister? You're looking around as if you want to buy the place. When you hit that bottom step, you come to a brace with your shoulders back, your stomach in, your feet at a 45-degree angle, and your hat straight. Jump. Oh, you're in it now, mister.
These screen stars turned fighting men were Uncle Sam's most persuasive mouthpiece. There's no overestimating the impact of knowing that such idols were facing gunfire, too.
I had heard later on that they were rather hoping that it would be good propaganda if I would get wounded. Probably not killed, that would be going too far, but if I got a nice, juicy wound, that would be very helpful for recruiting purposes. But I managed to get out of that.
Goodbye, Mama. I'm off to Yokohama for the
90-day wonders were what the new officers were called, after the 3 short months of training that transformed them into leaders of fighting men. They had much to learn and little time to do it in, and the movie industry was indispensable in speeding their way. At home, men who had worked in the motion picture industry as civilians were assigned to the 1st Motion Picture Unit and other units of the Army Signal Corps, where they made thousands of training and orientation films. The most important was Colonel Frank Capra's Why We Fight series, which clearly traced the rise of fascism and its threat to the free world. Even Walt Disney Productions joined the war effort, as artists put aside their drawings of Donald and Mickey and turned their talents to animating the principles of aerodynamics instead.
I'd like to give up my Maxwell to the salvage drive. I'm Jack Benny, the movie star.
Well, I never happened to have seen you in pictures.
At home, it became a patriotic duty to join the fight in every way we could. We gave up our nylons, our butter, our meat, our gas, but most importantly, we gave up our cash. Those in Hollywood put their famous faces to work. This time, though, they were playing themselves.
Buy, 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 buy a bond, and by, the bonds you buy will bring you victory. Buy, 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 buy a bond, and you'll be standing by the victory arch when Johnny comes marching home again. Oh, you should need no request, for after all, you know that you're investing in the best. Till the lads come back again, back the old attack again. Bye, bye, bye.
The price tag on World War II was $350 billion, 10 times that of World War I. War bonds sold by a star-studded sales force footed nearly a third of that bill.
The first tour they worked out was for me to go throughout New England. We went on that tour, and I've never seen so many people in my life. We would hit sometimes 5 and 6 cities in New England in one day. And there would be thousands. I'm talking about like 45 or 50,000 people, almost every place we went. And it was marvelous. So I started selling bonds, and I started selling them in cash, you know, not just signing up for them. I just wanted to see how much we could get in cash. So before I knew it, I would have $5 million, $6 million that I had collected, 7. And in those 9 days, it ran up to $30 million in New England alone.
For 25 bucks, you got a kiss or an autograph and the thrill of seeing a movie star right there in your own town square. To see an idol like Carol Lombard, who died tragically in a plane crash coming home from a tour, parade down Main Street, now that was an event.
We didn't miss a truck stop or a bus stop or a train stop. Tiny little towns. And it was a big thing for them. A couple of hundred people come out, you know, come out from the farms.
I remember riding in a tank in some parade somewhere. You know, these huge war bond rallies that one was an exhibit in order to help that effort.
I'd say, blow the siren, you know, in the middle of nowhere. And they'd open up the siren, chickens would scatter, and cows would turn around and look at you.
Rain or shine, they were there. And I was there a lot of times with my raincoat, my hood on, and my umbrella, and my boots, with just about my face sticking out, and that was about it, you know. But we'd sell them. We'd sell them.
Any bonds today? Bonds of freedom, that's what I'm selling. Any bonds today? Scrape up the most you can. Here comes the freedom man, asking you to buy your share of freedom today. Ah, many stamps today. Give kitties. We'll be blessed. We all invest in the USA. Sammy, my Uncle Sammy. Here comes the freedom man. You can't make tomorrow's plan. Not unless you buy a share of freedom today. Any stamp, any bond today.
Ronald Reagan, aren't you ashamed of yourself robbing from your own daughter's bank? Well, what's the big idea, you bandit?
Now, don't fly off the handle, Jenny. I'm going to invest it for her.
Invested in what?
The safest investment in the world. United States defense bonds. Here, take a look at this.
Well, what are we waiting for?
As this team of dedicated salesmen traveled across the country, the front page headlines traced their every move. Hollywood Victory Caravan to bring stars galore to the city, read page 1 of the Detroit Free Press. For one night's work raised $60,000 in bonds. Nearly 500,000 of Boston's otherwise sensible people yelled themselves silly at their favorite movie stars last night and didn't care who knew it. The Boston Herald wrote about an event that added $78,000 to the pot. But a Washington Post columnist put it best. They came, they saw, they conquered.
Baby, won't you please come home? You know your little mama's all alone.
After the difficult training and even more difficult goodbyes, our servicemen headed off for camps all over the world where they were far from the familiar comforts of home. Second to the danger of combat, the most demoralizing part of soldiering was the feeling of isolation. The USO had been created to serve as a home away from home for servicemen, wherever they may be. Those who were fighting at the front were especially in need of support. And bringing flesh and blood entertainers to these troops was as important as it was difficult.
Baby, won't you please come home? You made me love you. I didn't want...
It had to have looked like a vision or a mirage. To be stationed in northern Africa without a familiar sound or image for hundreds of miles and see Francis Langford on a hastily constructed platform breaking the desert silence with a song. When the entertainers who traveled on what the USO called the foxhole circuit stepped to the front of their makeshift stages and saw 1,000 tired soldiers burst into grateful applause, they knew there wasn't a theater on earth that was more important than this.
Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile.
Even before Pearl Harbor, the USO had begun to set in motion an intricate system of camp shows. Stateside, there were 2 circuits that brought entertainment to Army bases and naval stations here on our soil. And there was hardly a star in Hollywood who didn't participate.
In your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile.
Your kind indulgence. The Mercury Theater welcomes all you servicemen to an hour or 2 of magic, hanky-panky, hocus-pocus, and humbug. We trust you like to be fooled. We hope we fooled you.
I tell you, it was so cold in my room today that a St. Bernard brought up my breakfast. His brandy keg was empty. And there was scent on his breath.
Personally, I just missed California, flew in on an Army truck. My stomach will be here in 2 weeks. But I do want to say it's a pleasure to be here.
I have a song that I used to do in a show called Let's Face It a couple of months ago, and it's called Melody in 4S. It's the story of a selectee from the time he gets his questionnaire and his physical examination and is assigned to a class. Hey, young pup, your number's up. Hop-de-doo-doo-doo-lady. Get your doodle-beat for sound, get your doodle-beat for sound, give him gone, get your say. Wheel, get your game, the mailman. Get your doodle-beat for sound, give him gone, get your say. Wheel, get your game, hello to the plane, say. Get your doodle-beat for sound, give him gone, get your say. Wheel, get your game, hello to the plane, say. Get your doodle-beat for sound, give him gone, get your say. Wheel, get your game, flat feet, get your doodle-beat for sound, get your sound, give him gone, get your say. Wheel, get your game, give him gone, get your say. Wheel, get your game, hold to the plane, daddy boy, give him gone, get your say. Wheel, get your game, hello to the plane, say. Get your doodle-beat, get your doodle-beat, get your doodle-beat, get your doodle-beat, one day.
Dotes and dozy dotes and little lambsy divey, a kiddly divey too, wouldn't you? Irsy dotes and dozy dotes and little lambsy divey, a kiddly divey too, wouldn't you?
Somebody's flat. Thank you. Don't you stare at me.
At home, performers who toured with the USO were likely to have a room to change in and a decent bed. But the foxhole circuit was another story altogether. The closer to the front, the greater the hardships. But the greater the hardships, the more powerful the rewards.
If you would have liked to have had your morale picked up, all you had to do was walk across a stage, and you would have gotten the biggest hand. The yelling would have been absolutely tremendous. The whistles, fantastic. You had to cross that stage thinking, God has put me on the face of the earth for this.
You're there, and as far as your eye can see, they're up in trees, they're hanging on telephone poles, and when they'd get a certain distance, of course, you lost them, only in as much as being able to see them. You knew they were there because of the thunderous applause and the yelling and the screaming.
Ladies and gentlemen of Germany, I promise you something. And do's I or do's I don't keep my promise. Ladies and gentlemen, we want peace. Universal peace. And I will have peace. Piece of Sweden, piece of Norway, and a piece of Czechoslovakia.
Joey Brown was the first Hollywood star to travel to the front lines. In 1942, he lost his son to the war. He spent the next 3 years traveling to every theater of operation, performing for millions of boys as if each were his own.
Hello, boys.
Marlene Dietrich's sister was a prisoner at the Belsen concentration camp. She took a particular risk in traveling overseas. Her name was on Hitler's infamous death list.
Mommy.
Other Hollywood celebrities traded star-studded premieres for makeshift stages overseas. Paulette Goddard, the Andrews sisters, Martha Ray, all joined the effort as soldiers in grease paint.
Very happy to be here. We've been hearing about this place ever since we arrived. We arrived last Tuesday. They said, wait till you get out to that jungle training center. Yes, sir. Lovely, too. This is a concentration camp with pineapples. Look at this.
Bob Hope and his troupe, Hope's Gypsies they called them, first caught the bug for entertaining the troops on an airfield 70 miles east of L.A. In May of 1941, when Hope took his radio show to the soldiers at March Field, he had no idea that that 70 miles would turn into thousands by the end of the war.
I was doing radio, you know, at Sunset and Vine for NBC, and this producer of ours said they want you at March Field next week. I said, March Field, where's that? He said, Riverside, California. It's an Air Force base.
I was supposed to be Bob Hope's guest on his radio show that night, and he said, we're not going to do it in the studio. We're going to try something new and go out to March Field. The show started, and I have never heard so much applause in all my life. And Bob was so excited. I've never seen him that way since or before.
Frances Langford was one of the top singers and radio personalities of the day. She traveled with Hope throughout the South Pacific and Europe, along with dancer Patty Thomas and comedian Jerry Colonna.
And Jerry Colonna would come out, and he would mince around, sing a couple of songs, do some jokes with me. I used to die at Jerry Colonna.
Katie, beautiful Katie, you are the only girl that I adore.
Of all the things that helped lift the GI's spirits, nothing worked like the sight of a pretty girl.
I just want you boys to see what you're fighting for, that's all.
In the official booklet put out by the War Department for all entertainers traveling overseas, female performers were advised on what to take along. Your most important baggage is your stage wardrobe, it reads. Take an artificial flower for your hair. When you go buy bobby pins, pick up an extra bottle of nail polish. Remember, a GI wants you looking like the girl back home on a Saturday night date.
My hair was very long. It was down to here at the time. And blonde. I wanted to keep my hair blonde, so I brought all this peroxide along, and I'd put it on my hair at night and go to bed and leave it. And the next morning, no way to wash it out, I would just brush it real hard, and I didn't go bald. But I stayed blonde. Well, I think right in here we ought to have Frances do just a little snatch of a song. Would you like to do that? Yeah. How about Mother doing a little song right here?
I'm in the mood for love, simply because you're near me.
We could make them laugh, and the girls could make them smile, and that's all you need.
Even in baggy army fatigues, these USO entertainers were invaluable in boosting the soldiers' morale. Knowing they'd come all that way to sign a few autographs and sing a few songs was enough to lift the GI's spirits for months to come.
I'm in the Mood for Love was always a favorite because I could start, I'm in the mood for love, and the minute I would say that, some guy, I don't care where you were, would say, you come to the right place, sister. And it looked like somebody went ahead and told somebody else to say that. Do you think they all think alike? I guess they do.
Here's a letter that a serviceman wrote home. Dear Mom and Dad, well, guess what? I am now in a large hangar waiting for Bob Hope's show to start. 5 boys from our barracks just went into Sacramento to a hotel and picked up Skinny Edwards and his band. Bob Hope, Jerry Colonna, and Francis Langford just came in and walked right by me. Colonna nodded. Sure would like to get an autograph. And a line down is Jerry Colonna's signature. When it comes to understanding the USO, that signature says it all.
I'm in the mood for love.
Every night while I'm undressing, saying my prayers and lightly confessing, I can hear hot licks from a set of drums upstairs. Well, it couldn't be Johnny, 'cause he isn't there. Johnny's overseas, we know not where, but believe it or not, every night on the dot, I can hear a tenor drum say, Billy Dick, tick-tack. When's that character coming back? When's that kid in the GI lit gonna choo-choo down the track? Poor old me, I'm as beat as can be, and my rimmers even started to rust. Look at these sticks trying to tick out the licks, they're covered with an inch of dust. Beat by dust, Billy Dick, tick-tack.
The first 2,343 American GIs were killed on day 1 at Pearl Harbor. During that same 24-hour period, almost 1,800 others were wounded. It was just the beginning.
The tour that I made, it wasn't in 1941. It was when the boys were coming home from Germany after the Battle of the Bulge. And that eastern seaboard has a lot of hospitals, and I visited all of them in that 3 months. And the doctors in Germany and France didn't have time to put them back together again. So they put all of them in body casts. And as I would be talking to a young man with the face of an angel, I would see that they were going to cut off both arms because there was a mark that he was unable to keep his arms or his legs, or maybe it would show a bullet in the sternum of his chest, and they hadn't taken it out yet because they didn't have time to do all that surgery. They just sent them home for the doctors to take care of them here.
If one image remains etched in the minds of all USO entertainers, it's that of an 18-year-old soldier back from the front with the wounds to prove it. Visiting the hospital wards was an exercise in concentration. Your heart might be breaking, but you kept that smile on your face.
They put on the list of hospitals that I would visit, one outside of Washington, D.C., called Forest Glen. Now, I had a routine all set for wherever there was a swimming pool. I would have a swimming meet with anybody, the walking wounded or whatever, because once a swimmer, always a swimmer. But they didn't tell me at Forest Glen that they were paraplegics. I go down to the pool in my bathing suit and my little terry jacket, and I say, okay, everybody that knows how to swim, we're going to have a swim meet, we're going to do a medley relay, and we're going to do this and everything. And the guys come, and here's a fellow that comes to swim, and he's only got one leg. And one of the boys, with one arm and one leg, dove into the pool with me and raced me to the end of the pool. I slowed down so he could win, but he did okay with one arm and one leg.
Embrace me, my sweet embrace, some of you. Embrace me.
I did a song in Africa that, out on the desert, we were in a hospital where a lot of tanks had been hit, and the fellows had been burned badly. And I went into this one ward, and the fellow was bandaged all up, and Bob said, I think you ought to sing a song. I said, okay, and I started to sing Embraceable You. And I just got into it, and I realized the man didn't have any arms. Well, I quit. Right there, I just couldn't go on. And Bob walked in, and he started telling a good joke or something, you know, but I never got over that. I just went out in the hall and let go. It's terrible.
I was sitting at a table with one guy, and he was asking me a lot of questions, and I was answering them back, and we were just wonderful. And I said, I guess time we better go. And I got up, and I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I looked up, and it was the doctor, and I'd like to stay. So I stayed a while. I thought maybe the kids were gone. The man I was talking to hadn't uttered one word in over 6 months. But to me, his conversation was going and going and going. A cure like that, only because he recognized something from home. Now, can you imagine Bob Hope in the same situation? He must have had hundreds of healings like that, only because of the recognition, someone from home.
You know, you go through the hospital and you try to cheer him up, you know. Jerry Colon and I used to go walk into a ward and we'd start screaming. And we'd go, well, where's everybody? Where are the nurses? Where's my bed? Where's this? Because they're not used to that. And when you do that, everybody in the place starts to chuckle, you know. Because they're used to people walking around quiet and everything. Colon used to say, I love life and I want to live, da, da, da. And they just sit up and look. Because it really was so different than anything that they experienced, and it was the way to go.
I used to do things that were fun, because of course being young, you could do things you don't stop and say, is this the right thing to do? I'd climb in bed with them. It just seemed to me, with their broken bodies, what a wonderful thing just to get real close to them. It's frisky and a little naughty, but when you're young, you can do those things.
Esther Williams was one of the popular pinups of the war. She may be the only Hollywood starlet who posed for pictures in a hospital bed.
They said, you are going to do these. And there were the exercises that the doctors had, the physical culture guys, had come up with to have the boys do every single day while they were recuperating. And those pictures, when you're practically standing on your head and you're throwing your pelvis in a direction so that you are strengthening your back muscles because you're lying in bed all the time. I mean, I never laughed so hard in a portrait sitting in my life.
Most hospital visits were a time to talk one-on-one. You'd ask a soldier where he grew up and whether he had a girl back home, but you learned never to ask, how do you feel? Because most of the time, you already knew.
One was close to the front. I went into a tent, and he was very, very sick. And the doctor said, just say hello to him. So I went over and I put my hand on him, and he said, oh, don't touch him. He just goes haywire. Everything, you could touch it anywhere. And I forget what you call that, but it was so bad. And I sang a few bars, I'm in the mood for love for him, you know. And he smiled. And he said he was from somewhere, and I couldn't remember. It was hard to hear him. And we said goodbye. The next morning, he was gone. You go back and you ask about them. And there's an empty bed.
At the time that the war broke out, the old 20th Century Fox lot on Hollywood's Western Avenue had stood abandoned for years. With its vacant buildings and deserted streets, it had the strange, creaky quality of a ghost town. But in May of 1942, a circus in military uniform moved in. Overnight, the old Fox lot became what Bob Hope called the military madhouse. Armed Forces Radio had arrived.
Stand by, Americans. Stand by, servicemen of the United Nations. Here's Mail Call, selected by fighting men as one of the 3 top radio programs presented regularly by Armed Forces Radio.
From 64 American expeditionary stations, 140 government-owned and foreign commercial stations, 118 overseas camp radio installations, and from dozens of powerful shortwave stations beamed all over the globe, transcriptions of this program reach every American overseas who can find time to lend an ear.
Their mission was an important one, to provide high-quality radio entertainment featuring Hollywood's biggest stars and to distribute it around the world wherever American soldiers were based. Recruited for the job were some of the most talented writers and producers radio had seen, including one of Bob Hope's ace joke writers, Sherwood Schwartz. Talent was in abundance. Military order was not.
At 6:30, it's very hard to be funny. We were comedy writers, so we took to leaving after roll call and going off for coffee. And the Army didn't take kindly to that. And Captain Petito, who was regular Army, said anybody who isn't in his office immediately after roll call is going to go on detail. We didn't. And he said, okay, everybody on detail. And so we had to put our fatigues on, and we had to pull all the weeds from the officer's parking lot. That was our detail. And along came Major Peterson, and he saw us pulling weeds when he arrived. And he said, who's writing mail call? Who's doing G.I. Joe? Who's writing all the shows? So he went to see Captain Petito. And he said, Captain, when you find men who pull weeds for a living, you can punish them by making them write jokes. It doesn't work the other way around.
The studio facilities were donated by NBC, CBS, and the other large broadcasting companies. It was there that programs with titles like Command Performance, Yank Swing Session, G.I. Jive, and Yarns for Yanks were recorded in front of live soldier audiences. Most of them were variety shows. A little music, a little comedy, maybe a report from the front. And all you had to do was listen to the humor to know that these shows were written especially for the boys.
Yes, sir, it's the GI Journal again, your radio newspaper of the AEF, the paper that prints all your contributions from overseas. Men, on the target range, a bull is a clean hit. Well, here's a man who, while he may not be a hit, is definitely a lot of bull. Your original editor-in-chief, Kay Kaiser.
Well, hiya, men. Well, say, men, it's sure a man-sized help and a pleasure being your editor again. This is your 5-star final, and standing by are your 5-star reporters. So then, of course, our star outside reporter, Professor Colonna, who ought to be calling in with a big story right now. Hello, City Desk.
Hello, Desk. This is Colonna. I'm overseas with the ground troops. We're on a forced march.
A forced march? Really?
Yes, and we're carrying full field packs and everything. We're really loaded.
But I had a swell time, and I slept right in the barracks last night with the boys. You know what barracks are. That's 2,000 cots separated by individual crap games.
By the way, Rochester, what's your brother doing?
My brother's in the infantry. KP division.
What's that, KP?
Keep peeling.
Well, I wrote a poem, Jack, and I'd like to read it.
Now, wait a minute, Mary. You cannot read the poem. The poem's out.
Jack, you let me read my poem, or I'll tell all these boys here that when you were in the Navy, you went up to the crow's nest looking for eggs.
But why are men so crazy about sweater girls?
I don't know, Judy. That's one mystery I'd like to unravel.
We had access in the Army to any star we wanted. So, and you didn't have that in civilian life. In civilian life, you had budgets to worry about. That was wonderful. You didn't say, let's get somebody like Clark Gable. You got Clark Gable. You didn't say, let's get somebody like Bob Hope, who was #1 in his field. You got Bob Hope, or Durante, or any of the others.
Hello, young man. I sort of remember you from someplace. You're,
I'm a private sad sack.
Another chapter in our story, the life of Sad Sack. We pick up our story when the Sad Sack was first born. The proud father looks at the tiny bundle and says to the mother,
You're supposed to keep the baby, not the stork.
But the Sad Sack proves to his parents that he is a brilliant child. At the end of his very first year in school, he comes running home with the happy news.
Mama, I got I got skipped to the next class. They gave me I've been expelled.
And romance came to the sad side. He met the girl of his dreams. He tries to make love by serenading her. He holds her hand and sings.
Besame.
Hey, what am I going to get, a kiss or a quart of milk?
Mother says it's in the groove. Daddy says it's hot. Backwards, it spells Elabooze. Now, brethren, what have you got? You've got Jubilee!
There was something for everyone, and there's no estimating how a snappy beat or a good belly laugh helped cheer up millions of homesick soldiers who were battered by combat or stagnant with boredom. Maybe the old Fox lot was a military madhouse, but these inmates knew just what their fighting men needed.
Command Performance USA, the greatest entertainers in America, as requested by you, the fighting men of the United States Armed Forces throughout the world.
By far the most popular show was Command Performance. The idea was simple enough. Soldiers wrote letters requesting sounds from home. Everything from a song to, well, more specialized requests.
Tonight, we believe we have the most unusual request made to date. Here is the letter. Special Service Division, War Department, Los Angeles. Dear Command Performance, we feel we could win the war single-handed if we could only hear Carol Landis sigh. That's all we want, just to sigh. Signed Jimmy, Doc, and Big Mac somewhere in the South Pacific. Okay, fellas, don't forget your promise. Carol Landis will now sigh.
The chirping of newborn chicks, held by Ginger Rogers and Alice Faye. The cackle of a frying egg, cooked by Veronica Lake. The roll of dice, thrown by Dorothy Lamour. And Ann Miller tapping in army boots. No sound was too outlandish. Their request was Armed Forces Radio's command.
Well, gang, Command Performance has filled many an order for those sounds that remind you of home, from the bleat of a billy goat to the fizz of a bourbon and soda. And now comes the Ordnance Gang at 863 with a letter from Sarge Everett Hankey and Corporal Roland Lipton and this little dilly. It says, Dear Command, enclosed, please find peace off top of Stuka Dive Bomber, for which you will please have Lana Turner come out and fry us a 3-inch porterhouse steak smothered with onions, and let's hear it sizzle. Just to prove there's no request too large, fellas, here she is, Lana Turner.
Hello, fellas. Hi, Bob. Say, have the FBI men found a steak yet?
Yes, it's backstage, but Lana, this is dangerous. If this audience sees steak, they'll come right up here after it.
Oh, I don't know. They've seen ham all evening, and you're still here.
Right now, I'm bacon. Lana, let's get on with this thing. Be a good girl and let's fry that steak, huh?
Okay. Bring on the porterhouse steak!
Well, look, they got an armed guard around the steak. Oh, look at this.
Well, all right, Bob. Is your griddle hot?
Yeah, I think so.
That'll do, Bob. Now, the steak, please. Oh, well, here it is, fellas. Beautiful. A porterhouse steak, 3 inches thick. The only one in captivity.
You're going to give that a hot foot?
Into the frying pan.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. There you are, fellas. That's the sound of a steak sizzling.
Fellas, that's the steak. That's not me sizzling. That's the steak.
Fellas, I wish I could cook a big steak for each and every one of you.
But the most ambitious production ever staged by Armed Forces Radio was a bona fide all-star extravaganza.
We did a show one time which was an opera, a Dick Tracy opera.
Who's that knocking at my door? Who's that singing troubadour? Bringing song to my boudoir?
It is
is I, Dick Tracy.
Bob Hope was Flat Top, and Bing Crosby was Dick Tracy. Frank Sinatra was a character called Shaky. Dinah Shore was Tess Trueheart. I mean, it was a cast that you dream about.
Hiya, Dick. Give me some skin.
Thank you, Scad, Tess Trueheart.
There was a scene in which Flat Top in the script came up to Dick Tracy and he said, "This is Flat Top. Put him up."
Who's that?
I'm Flat Top, and I got a gun in your back. Stick him up.
Then the mole, who was Jimmy Durante, was supposed to say, "This is the mole. Put him up."
I am the mole. Stick him up.
And instead of that, he said, "This is the mole. Shove it up." And the audience collapsed. There was like a 5-minute laugh. And the censors felt that that was unfit for our boys' ears. And that was deleted from the show because it was too vulgar and anyway, that always struck us funny. Here are guys out there dying in the field, and this was too much for their gentle ears to hear. So.
The radio shows that reached those gentle ears from the jungles of the South Pacific to the deserts of North Africa all had one thing in common. They all spelled home. When command performance fulfilled requests for the sounds of foghorns in San Francisco or cabbies fighting in New York, it was really bringing servicemen a reminder of life before the war. And on those days when a soldier would spend 1 hour too many deafened by gunfire, when he was so beaten and broken that abstract words like democracy and freedom could no longer inspire, the familiar songs and sounds of Armed Forces Radio service brought back into clear perspective why the fighting was worth the price.
Beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't
Pardon me, boy, is that the Chattanooga choo-choo?
Yes, yes, track 29.
Boy, you can give me a shot.
When servicemen on leave in unfamiliar cities were looking for a little recreation, they knew they could find a friendly face and a welcoming smile at the local USO clubs. The USO was charged with providing fighting men with a little good cheer, and had set in place hundreds of servicemen clubs around the world. The food was free, the volunteer hostesses were pretty, sometimes, and it was one way that a community could express its appreciation, and the entertainment community was no exception. The Hollywood Canteen on Sunset and Cahuenga and New York's Stage Door Canteen in the heart of Broadway were the two most famous servicemen clubs. Here's where the kings and queens of stage and screen showed who they felt the real royalty was.
On Wednesdays and Saturdays, when I wasn't working, my mother and my sister and I used to go to the Hollywood Canteen, and I was really a busboy there.
I used to go there quite often. We'd dance with the boys, and we'd have hot dogs with them, or dinner with them, or something like that, you know. We had a ball.
The Hollywood Canteen was founded by Betty Davis and John Garfield. It was built from the remains of an abandoned nightclub with the help of the construction unions who waived their fees. Servicemen only were allowed through the doors, and once inside, you never knew who might be working.
Some of the biggest names you'd see down on their hands and knees scrubbing the kitchen, you know. It's wonderful.
Coffee and donuts and coffee and donuts. They had sandwiches for them, too. And you'd say, where are you stationed? I'm only in town for 48 hours or 24 hours or 12 hours.
I was very serious about clearing the tables. That's a big issue with me.
Big names and small names, the boys didn't care. Somebody to dance with and somebody to make them feel important.
Listen, I spent a good deal of time when I was at the Hollywood Canteen getting autographs of the other people who were there.
No upsetting the nerves, no bad taste. It's a nice, smooth drink. Pour a little in your glass and drink it right down. But be sure and ask for Guzzler's gin. A nice, smooth drink.
On opening night, the floor show of the Hollywood Canteen featured Eddie Cantor, Dinah Shore, Betty Hutton, and Abbott and Costello. Kay Kaiser and Xavier Cugat frequently brought their bands, and sometimes Marlene Dietrich would sing. At the Stage Door Canteen, you were likely to see a few numbers performed by the cast of a current Broadway show, and Ray Bolger was always a favorite among the troops.
Without much more ado, I will do the best.
Looking back on it, it was so simple. In fact, when talks about it, I say, well, what's so great about that? What was great about it was the spirit and the combined effort to do anything one could to make that group of men feel they were needed and wanted and belonged.
Chattanooga choo-choo!
Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler!
Heil Hitler!
Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler!
Heil myself.
That's not in the script.
When the Führer says, wie ist the master race? Wie Heil! Heil! Right in the Führer's face, not to love the Führer.
Of course, going to war didn't mean that Hollywood stopped doing what it did best. It took the movies to make us laugh at Hitler, just one of many indications of how powerful they were. Even before we entered the war, when Germany was still an important market for films, some of Hollywood's most talented mavericks succeeded in making movies with anti-Nazi themes.
Right in the Führer's face.
You know, you're quite famous in London, Colonel. They call you Concentration Camp Earhart.
Yes, yes. We do the concentrating and the Poles do the camping.
Ernst Lubitsch's satire, To Be or Not to Be, was widely attacked upon its release. Many critics were disturbed by a movie that found humor in the Nazi rape of Poland. Some went so far as to accuse Lubitsch of endangering our war effort by treating the subject too lightly. But Lubitsch was firm. Is whipping and flogging the only way of expressing terrorism, he said? American audiences don't laugh because they underestimate the Nazi menace, but because they are happy to see it ridiculed.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Hollywood quickly changed its tune after the war in Europe became our war, too. Suddenly, Nazis were no longer taboo villains. In fact, they popped up in the least likely places.
Out of the jungle comes Tarzan, Tarzan's son, a beautiful princess, and men whose only mission in life is death.
Now, Tarzan make war.
No one seemed to blink when the Nazis made it to Tarzan's jungle, or when they traveled back in time to the 19th century London of Sherlock Holmes.
Yes, Kitty. The Nazis killed him.
A string of movies had Hollywood's biggest comedians signing up with Uncle Sam. In 1941, the movies found a new topical subject. The draft was always good for a laugh.
You got me. One thing I can tell you, don't let him cut your hair.
Oh, that's not high enough. Do you take ether?
At Paramount, Bob Hope and Eddie Bracken starred in Caught in the Draft.
Drafty?
Not a bit. Do you feel it?
No.
I feel very comfortable in here.
Across town at Universal, Abbott and Costello served their time as buck privates.
Well, I took my uncle's advice. My uncle told me, Sir Herbie, you go in the army, that's all.
What uncle?
Uncle Sam.
All right, I understand.
He's my uncle, your uncle.
Yes, yes.
He's everybody's uncle in the army.
Yes, I understand.
He's the only relative I got.
Wait a minute.
I like my
I
Uncle
know, we
Sam.
all do, but look.
And over at Warner Brothers, Jimmy Durante and Phil Silvers equipped themselves for the GI life.
What size, buddy? 7 1/4.
One hat, 7 1/4.
One hat, 7 1/4.
That was a bad guess.
Even Ronald Reagan had a sense of humor about the draft.
Oh, you look wonderful in that uniform.
Not any better than the rest of the fellas. We all have the same tailor.
I'm in the army now. I'm on my way, and how? As one of a mob that's doing a job, we're in the army now. The monkey men will Tokyo.
Of course, when Harry James and his band joined up, they did it with a song and dance.
They'll find it all Ojokio when they get a swift kick in their Tokyo. Dinky, dinky, Hollywood. Mom, I miss your apple pie. Mom, I miss your food. Maybe moviegoers of 1941 needed these light-hearted depictions of the draft more than they knew. After all, ours was an army of civilians. The draft was unprotested, but it was also unfamiliar, as were drill sergeants, boot camp, and KP.
And as the country adjusted to these new facts of life, singing soldiers and bumbling sergeants helped turn our minds away from imagining the worst.
And by the way, I miss you too.
Have you finished with this, darling?
Yes.
It's a lovely story, isn't it? How she would keep through all her riper years.
It was an image that was hard to forget. A British family takes refuge in a bomb shelter and listens to the patriarch recite the fanciful words of Lewis Carroll as approaching bombs threaten to destroy their decent lives. In 1942, Mrs. Miniver won 4 of the top 5 Academy Awards. Greer Garson was the epitome of the heroic wartime woman. She set an example of quiet courage that helped stiffen our own resolve.
I don't need any help. Please leave me alone.
Oh, Al, don't be hurt.
I gotta go. Get that cab.
If you go out of this room now, you'll leave me to stumble all through my life the way you just did. I don't pity you, Al. I love you.
Pride of the Marines was based on the true story of Al Schmidt, who was blinded in combat in Guadalcanal. It's one of many wartime films where stalwart women say just the right words in just the right way.
Cry, darling. Cry your heart out. I won't try to tell you that you'll get over it soon. Because it'll take time. Maybe a long time. Oh, Miss Hepburn, I just heard...
Yes, I know. He sent you his dearest love and said he hoped you'd be his missus when he got back.
I can't stand it. I've got to get out of here.
Wait a minute. Why'd you volunteer for this work?
Because I wanted to help.
Help what?
I wanted to help my country.
Why do you think your country needs your help?
We're in a war, and we've got to win.
Yes, that's right. We're in a war, and we've got to win. And we're going to win. And that's why the boy you love is going overseas. And isn't that maybe why you're going to go back in there and get on your job?
Open your heart, Johnny. We're all in this fight together, women as well as men. Let's share our responsibilities. I want to be a part of you, Johnny. A part that goes with you on the battlefield, someone to come back to. This is a free United States. Doggone it, if we want to get married, let's get married.
You're my little...
When the women of wartime films weren't models of all American ideals, they were models of another kind. Pin-ups.
How would you like some coffee, a donut, an apple, a candy bar?
Won't you be my pin-up girl? Give a guy a break.
The best that we can give you is cocoa, a cookie, a piece of angel cake. You're my little pin-up girl.
In World War II, Betty Grable was the pin-up. Her picture may as well have been regulation equipment. Tens of thousands of servicemen carried her to every corner of the earth, and when she went up on a bunker or on a locker door, she instantly transformed a GI's new quarters into a home. Even the Army knew a good thing when they saw it. New recruits learned how to read a map by studying Grable, grid by grid. Who said the Army doesn't appreciate a pretty face? And Hollywood provided more than a few. The first months of war brought almost unrelenting bad news. When dismal headlines reported on the fall of one Pacific outpost after another, our screen heroes stepped in and gave us something to hang our hopes on.
Look, Captain Jim. Looky. Wham, wham.
Termites.
Combat films that didn't have us cheering often had us praying instead. Audiences watched the battle scenes in movies like Bataan and Guadalcanal Diary, thinking of their loved ones who were there.
Father, you got any objections if I say what I'm thinking?
Go right ahead, son. Don't mind me.
I'm telling you, this thing is over my head. It's going to take somebody bigger than me to handle it. I'm no hero. I'm just a guy. I come out here because somebody had to come. I don't want no medals. I just want to get this thing over with and go back home. I can't tell them bombs to hit somewhere else. Like I said before, it's up to somebody bigger than me, bigger than anybody. What I mean is, I guess it's up to God.
But But if you preferred to escape wartime reality, Hollywood movies provided options, from the sublime to the ridiculous.
The lady in the tutti frutti hat.
While the bell chimed the toll of
Yes, if you weren't surprised at who was singing, you were surprised at who was dancing. And if you weren't surprised at who was dancing, you were surprised at what they were dancing in.
Under the apple tree with anyone else but me, with anyone else but her. No, 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 not a single soul but me. No, no, no.
Yaka-yuka-laka, una-mana. Boy, make your request.
Life is fine with my baby on the swing shift. But the thing that led to love was her polka dotted glove, while the band played the polka dot. When you hear the time signal, the time will be time to fall in love with me. Hear those bells ring merrily. I love you. Hep, hep, you can't dig me right, you see. Speaking of birds, it's occurred to me.
Anything your heart desires.
An orange from Pomona.
A broad from Arizona.
A Hansel and a Gretel.
No, from Popocatépetl.
All of this.
All of this is
Mongo, Bongo, Solomon, and Jackson.
a boodly-bee-bop.
Pardon me, may I have the next dance? No, thanks. I'm sitting this one out.
No film better illustrates the impact of wartime movies than Casablanca. If Humphrey Bogart's Rick could see past his pain, and Ingrid Bergman's Ilsa could choose duty over love, then surely each of us at home could be wartime heroes in our own small ways. Whether it meant being satisfied with our ration of sugar, or finding strength when we had to say difficult goodbyes, the movies of World War II showed us how to bring out the best parts of ourselves. That's the power that Hollywood had then. Maybe it wouldn't work today, but then again, maybe it would.
He's looking at you, kid.
This is the G.I. Jive, man alive. It starts with the bugler blowing reveille over your bed when you arrive. Jack, that's the G.I. Jive. Roodle-de-toot, jump in your suit, make a salute. Voot! After you wash and dress,
more or less. You go get your breakfast in a beautiful little cafe they call the Mess. Jack, when you convalesce out of your seat into the street, make with the feet. Reach! Chunk all your junk back in the trunk. Fall on your bunk. Plunk. Soon you're counting Jeeps, but before you count to 5, seems you're right back digging that